And we're back once again, guys. Welcome back to another episode of the Solvable Mysteries Podcast. My name is Juras, and as every week, I'm joined by Glenn Highcove. Without any further ado, man, how are you feeling this weekend?
Hey, I'm doing all right. Getting in towards the summer. It's getting warmer and warmer outside. So, I'm excited to see us get through spring and, God willing, all of us stay healthy and, have a good rest of our year.
Exactly, man. We wish everyone, in the audience, health and happiness in terms of, moving into the summer times and things like that. And today, we're actually going to be returning to a very interesting case that we've done way back. Well, not necessarily way back. We've done it on multiple occasions, I would say. But since the feedback was so crazy, and literally, we're getting messages regarding the Kris Kremers and Lisanne Froon's case, literally every other day still. I thought it was only right for us to return to this case, but we will be returning in a different manner this week. This is not going to be a typical episode where, we just talk about it, about the case and things like that, because for our, longer time listeners, you already know that we've talked about so many details. We've looked at the pictures. We've done pretty much everything there is to do at this point in terms of just talking about the case. But this week we actually want to return and react to maybe some of the comments left on our YouTube page and various other messages that we received from our fans regarding this case. So, for just quickly before we delve deeper into today's episode, I just want to give a little disclaimer for everyone who wants to maybe find out more about our own opinions regarding the Kris Kremers and Lisanne Froon's disappearance. You could definitely check out episode number 56 of the Solvable Mysteries podcast, as well as episode 70 and 71. Now, I have some interesting thoughts of users on the YouTube channel and things like that who left their interesting comments, and we will be going through some of them later on the show, hopefully, if we have the time. Well, ideally I would like to go through everything because there are definitely interesting ones out there, but I guess without stopping here for too long, the initial thing that we should be doing, in my opinion, is giving a quick a quick little reintroduction into the case, maybe mentioning a few points that we did got wrong in the previous 3 episodes, which apparently I think we have, at least on my end. I definitely want to correct myself in some areas. So dude, before I jump into the, I guess, initial explanation of what happened and maybe correcting a few of the mistakes regarding the case that I've, the mistakes that I've made on previous episodes. Anything you want to add before we start going deeper into this case?
Well, I don't remember what mistakes you might have made because I know we've covered this case a few times, but I'll remember. I'll remember one of the most outraged comments was me forgetting that I was like, I don't think they had boots, and then one of the commenters is like, they literally found her foot in a boot. So what are you talking about? So
Yeah.
I feel a little bit embarrassed about that. Yeah, I mean, obviously, we've spent several hours on this topic. We've gone through a lot of content. We've gone through a lot of theories. I've gone back and forth on this. It's funny enough, I'm actually probably going back towards some of my original conclusions in the case, but it does seem like this case has just continual updates, and maybe that's why it's so exciting. I mean, obviously everybody is really worried for both of them and wants to know what happened, but it's one of these cases that seems to hold up a lot of attention, and to the point where I keep on seeing new content, not even from like big time YouTubers, but like fringe people that were talking about just crazy stuff that I'll talk about later. But yeah, it's a little bit fascinating how fascinating the case is to so many people across the world.
Exactly. So, by the way, on the visual assets, we're watching a compilation of Juan's pictures. So, I think everyone who knows about this case in a more in-depth manner, they already know who Juan is, and I think we will be leaving a link to this Google Photos. Album, and it's basically a compilation of the pictures that they took during their trip. So a quick reintroduction into the case for the people who may have not heard about it, and I'll try to keep it super brief so we could definitely jump to the theories and the interesting points as soon as possible. So a quick reintroduction. Kris Kremers was the shorter woman. She was 21 years of age, and Lisanne Froon was the taller one, who was 22 years of age. They were both two Dutch students, and they disappeared on April 1st in 2014 while hiking in Panama. Now, after an extensive search, portions of their bodies were actually found months later after their initial disappearance, and their cause of death could not be determined definitively, even though a lost scenario was ruled by the authorities. Because let's remember, the authorities both Panamanian and the Dutch concluded that this was some sort of an accident, and they ruled out any sort of foul play and stated that foul play is highly unlikely. However, through my research, and I think the sentiment will be shared with a lot of the audience members, I think a lot of us really do sort of not necessarily believe that maybe something devious might have happened, but for me personally, I definitely think that this should have been looked into more in depth, because there's a lot of things here to talk about, and that's why foul play could not be entirely ruled out, and the circumstances and aftermath of their disappearance has resulted in much speculation over the years. It's been like 8 years at this point since their disappearance. Well, we know that they're dead because portions of their bodies have been recovered, such as Chris's pelvic bone, which I don't think you can live, without that. And well, only the only thing from Lisanne that was found of any like significance, or like a bigger piece of her like actual body, is her foot, which was, as you've mentioned, still in the boot that she was definitely wearing now. So the premise for them arriving to Panama, to the small town of Boquete, where they initially, went on the Pianista Trail and subsequently, disappeared. They just finished their studies, and they decided to go to Panama for 6 weeks. Now, 2 of those weeks were spent actually, as we can see, like currently in these pictures. I think this is Bocos del Toro, if I'm not mistaken, and they're just hanging out and having fun. A lot of Dutch people were there as well, so it's not like they were all alone. And as you can see right now, they're with some other man on a table playing cards. Now, this is the area where they spent 2 weeks of their vacation, and nothing strange happened here. At least I don't think anything strange happened during this time. However, after those 2 weeks, they arrived to the little town of Boquete, or Boquete. And just for general reference, I think I want to stop this uh, compilation of pics just for a few seconds and jump to the Google Earth, and I'll actually want maybe you will have something to add here. So apparently, if I'm not mistaken, they actually, and they were from the Netherlands. So they were from like a northern European country, you could say, and they flown all the way to if I'm not mistaken, to Houston, but I could be mistaken here. And then they flew to San Jose, where I believe San Jose is the capital of Panama, and I believe they took a bus to Bocos del Toro, and I think they spent some time on Colon Island. Now, pardon me if I've gotten some of these initial travel, developments incorrectly to some extent, but they definitely did end up going to Boquete, and Boquete was a smaller town, and the premise was that they were going to teach, I believe, teach the kids maybe a language, but they definitely wanted to learn Spanish themselves. So before I actually go to what the events that went down, anything you want to add before I do that?
I mean, I will say that Dutch are well known for their language skills, um, because it's part of Europe that it's kind of adjacent to a lot of other countries. I mean, let's face it, Europeans in general are known for knowing multiple languages, but my experience has been that Dutch people specifically, because I guess Dutch is like a weird and difficult language that shares, you know, German language roots with obviously modern German and English. Not only do they have an advantage with those two languages in a way that doesn't really work the opposite, like for me to learn Dutch is not as easy as it is for them to learn English, but it just, I don't know, almost all the Dutch people I've ever met, including well, also people I haven't met, like there's famous actors like Rutger Hauer, who literally came here and to the United States and learned English like from scratch and can speak it amazingly. But I had a coworker at a company. I thought she was from here. I mean, when she told me that she had just recently immigrated in the past couple of years, and she spoke not just accentlessly accentless. I'll get it out.
Yeah,
Accentless English, but like American English, if it makes sense. Like just yeah, it was pretty amazing. So I guess maybe they were hoping that they could share sort of their national talent with the world. I guess what I wasn't clear of, because I know in previous episodes, full disclosure, anyone that's listened to our other episodes, at some point I was kind of felt like maybe what's the word, that they were like a little, they had made some assumptions maybe coming there that there was just going to be a job there, and that's where I'm not clear, like did they actually have a job lined up for them?
yeah. So I was about to get into that as well. So it's a good
Yeah.
point that you've mentioned that. By the way, and another interesting fact: we back when we did those episodes back in the day, for everyone who's on our YouTube channel, we didn't really have the Google Street View, but now we do, because it's pretty recent. People are wearing masks and things like that, but and it's like some sort of Walmart street view. You know what I mean? It's not the best quality here for sure. But what I will say is that Boquete seems a lot more lively than I initially had expected. So, that's something to think about. That, it's not like it's a super rural town. I mean, it looks like things are happening, even though, Boquete is literally in the middle of the country. So, it's not like they're in a super great location, in terms of communication and things like that. So let me just go back really quickly to the slideshow, and yeah, I think we should definitely continue on. So, right, after arriving in Boquete, the girls were supposed to start volunteering at the local children's school, and this was on Monday, 31st of March. However, upon arrival, and perhaps due to a mishap, they were quickly informed they could not start work that weekend as planned. Let me just see if the slideshow could start playing. So yeah, now this was of great disappointment. As a result, Kris and Lisanne set out to plan other activities to fill their time and the newfound freedom. One of these plans included a hike to the nearby Pianista Trail, among others. Now, the girls had researched the trail and decided to undertake the hike on April 1st. They were going to like a masseuse named Sigrid, who was Dutch as well. And this masseuse, Sigrid, which, this is something that we have not mentioned on our previous episode, so another clarification. She told, the investigation that the girls were very excited and talked to her with enthusiasm about the following day's activity. Now, one thing to mention here is that it's definitely a pretty dangerous trip to undertake if you're ill-equipped with water, for say, and maybe wearing inadequate clothing, and you don't have like a guide helping you out on that trip. Now, Speaking of guides, and I think this guy is gonna play a big role in this podcast. There is a local guide called Feliciano Gonzalez. I think we didn't mention his last name, but this is his name the last time we talked about this case. But this is the same guy I sort of threw under the bus on episode number 71. So for everyone who wants to know of my grandiose theory on what actually happened to the girls, which is I'm not saying that theory is written in stone. It's definitely something that I could be debated upon, and I'm not really sure if I'm still following along with that theory because I did learn some more information about this case. But if anyone's interested, you could go check out the ending of episode number 71 where I talk about this guy. Now this guy, why I say he plays a big role in the story, Feliciano Gonzalez, because he's literally everywhere. He's the same guy who was supposed to give them a tour, on the next day, but then he went to their house. And I'll want your opinion right here, dude, because I might forget to ask you later on the show. The Feliciano Gonzalez guy, okay, he books a tour, like the girls book a tour with him for April 2nd, but unfortunately something wrong happens on April 1st. So, they don't go to his, I guess, office or his house or whatever. So he goes to their home, and from what I've gathered, he waits 90 minutes outside of their home until he finally acquires the key to their room somehow, and then opens the door to their room and doesn't find them. So, do you think it's not suspicious that, he's just a guide? Why is he so invested in waiting 90 minutes outside for the girls to come out? And also, he's the same dude who later on finds the bones, I believe both Lisanne's foot and Kris Kremers' pelvic bones, when literally major task forces were spending like many hours on the search during day and night with sniffer dogs and all that. A month and a half later, or somewhere around 2 months, he's the same dude who finds the bones. Well, he was part of a group of 6 who initially go down and find the bones, but don't you think that's a little bit suspicious how this guy's literally everywhere in regards to this case?
I mean, yeah, no. I'll devil's advocate. I'll pretend like I'm his defense attorney. So, I'll say that the money from foreign tourists is good, and for various reasons, he might be used to people kind of being late on stuff, both tourists and locals. Um, I, I'm kind of keeping myself from saying other stuff about, like maybe cultural or gender attitudes about time, or people taking a long time to get ready. I don't know. I feel like my wife takes a long time to get ready. So maybe maybe his own wife takes 90 minutes to get ready for stuff. So that's one thing. And then the other thing is, in terms of
Yeah.
him being the one that found the stuff. Well, yeah, true enough. There were a lot of people looking. It seems a little more than a little suspicious, but then he's also the person spending the most time in that area, if that makes sense. So those people, they look once, twice, 3 times. He's up there like, I don't know, every other day or something, and he's up around the area. So I guess
I will
if
say,
there was any, you know what I mean?
I just want to say it makes sense in that sense, definitely. But what about the locals? I know the local woman, Nagobi woman, brings back the backpack, and I think, we talked a little bit in previous episodes how we found the backpack to be a cause of suspicion for us, in a sense that it was turned up only after the reward money of $30,000, I believe, was placed. But it didn't turn up like literally the next day. It still turned up like over a month in advance. But it also didn't turn up, before the money was offered. So
Well, so that's a
yeah,
good. Yeah, let me add on to that. Like, I
okay,
think that's perfect. What if it is then that like the locals, like the local natives, what if they're nervous about even being connected to it? So maybe that guy gets to be kind of like the, oh, look what I found, but really like someone else found it and they told them, and they're like, look, I don't really want to get involved. That was one thing I wanted to research ahead, or maybe it might be good for a follow up. Is I was really curious about what kind of illicit activities go in that area. I mean, obviously, anywhere between South America and here is a drug transshipment route. But some areas, some routes are a lot more likely than others. I don't know that like those mountains are really the best way to get, let's say, illicit substances up to the United States. It may be places where things are grown, but
yeah,
it's not going to be like, what I mean, it's going to be, there's only a couple different things that can be grown up there, and I don't know that it's ultimately worth anyone's time. But
exactly, yeah,
obviously there's always some kind of illicit activity. So part of what I was wondering about, and this will relate specifically to some of the things that this guy just said, and maybe why our user comments seem to be so suspicious of him. It makes me wonder sometimes if maybe he was covering or helping other people cover for other things. So sometimes my suspicion of him isn't really him so much as like who he's friends with, or like, and it doesn't even have to be insidious. Insidious. It could be like literally. There's just, imagine this. We've talked about this before. Sometimes the worst thing that can happen to like an organized criminal enterprise or anything that people don't want to find out about is some poor person falling victim accidentally to something in the area, right? Like you don't want people looking over here and then like, oh, this person got lost right next to your, you know, illicit operation, and now all the cops are looking in all the bushes and you're like, geez, like what can we do to find this person faster so they don't get in our business?
exactly, man. And that's a good thing that you've just mentioned this information, because I think we will definitely be returning to the guide still in this episode, especially when we're going to be reviewing the comments, because a lot of people are like sort of leaning towards that maybe Feliciano Gonzalez has something to do with it. Also, there's an interesting review left about him on one of the, I guess, Yelp type of a site, but it's not Yelp. It's for like tourism, something like that. We'll definitely talk about it later on in the show if we still have the time. But now, as the slideshow was continuing, it's a good point to actually stop here, because this is picture 508. Let's remember that 509 was the picture that was missing, and I want to talk a little bit about that as well today. So before we do that, I think this is a good time to stop at this picture just for a few seconds. I do believe this is the last picture, but man, I remember on one of these episodes getting really messed up and really not being sure if that was the last picture. But since, in the slideshow we are already getting these nighttime pictures, I would assume that Juan wouldn't like sort of, you know, for some reason not make this the last picture. So if this is 508, and I'm sure I could find this information, but just for time's sake, let's just let's just say that this is 508. Let's remember that picture 509 is missing, and the next picture in the timeline is already of the nighttime pictures. Now I don't think this is actually 510. This is just one of the more interesting pictures of the nighttime pictures, which there was around 80 in total, taken, I believe, 8 days after 508 was taken. But the interesting point is that 509 is missing. So let's just quickly go through the rest of the story, and then I think we could definitely jump to the theories finally. So this is still April 1st, and I believe this is the last picture, and from the timestamps that were found in the information of the photos metadata, which was actually contested by a lot of internet photograph experts, stating that there is a high chance that maybe these pictures, the metadata in these pictures were definitely tampered with, but maybe not even on purpose. Well, some of it may have been done on purpose, and I think if we still have the time, we might end up talking about it today. But the interesting point is that maybe these pictures were showing times not correctly. Maybe because some people think that maybe these pictures were showing the timestamps on these pictures were 2 hours in advance of the actual time. But just for the sake of trying to keep it as legitimate as possible, let's just go with the official story, because that has never been proved to my understanding. So this picture, if it is actually 508, then it has been taken on 1:54 p.m. on April 1st. So, just at the time right after noon. And, 2 hours after this picture was taken, we already have the phones of the two girls making activity, indicating that something bad had happened 2 hours after this picture was taken, or maybe if this is not the last picture, maybe, the picture that was the last one. 2 hours after that, the calls are immediately coming in. Now, let's remember that Kris Kremers, the woman seen in this particular picture, had an iPhone, and then, Lisanne had that Samsung phone. So apparently, Kris is the first one to call for help, or allegedly Kris, if Kris is still using the phone, if you know what I mean, because her phone calls 112 at 4:39 p.m. and 112 is actually not the official emergency number for Panama, but apparently if you call 112, it will still like direct you to like the emergency services somehow. So we talked about that on previous episodes. Let's not stop here for too long. But then Lisanne's phone, goes off 12 minutes after that, which would be 4:51 p.m. And she also calls, apparently she calls, if she's using the phone, if you know what I mean, 112 as well. So, dude, without stopping here for too long, I want to quickly go through the timeline, but I really want to ask you for your opinion here, because I will forget. What do you think may have happened? Like, if, for say, this is picture 508. What do you think may have happened in the 2 hours following this picture, that the girls are already calling for help, but they're only calling once? They're only doing a call each. And apparently the calls don't go through or something like that, but they never call for the second time, either of them, on that day. More calls will only come in the following days. But something happens to them in the 2 hours after this picture. They call for help, but only once. So, your thoughts, man?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like they were dealing with some kind of, I'm guessing, medical emergency, and something that was taking up a lot of their time. And maybe they were still mobile. So they go, I mean, if they were smart, they would say, let's try the phone. They try it, and they're like, oh, we can't get any reception. Maybe we have to try to get higher.
But yeah, but let's say they do get up higher, but they never make the second calls. You know what I mean? Like, don't you think that's
Yeah.
maybe
So,
okay? Yeah, I think I may know what you might say. So in
yeah.
advance, are you going to say that maybe they're immobilized and can barely move and are in no position to get up any higher, and in the back of their heads are like, okay, so we're not gonna get reception here, so no point of calling for the second time, because one of us or both of us are immobile and we cannot get to higher ground? Is this what you may be entailing?
Yeah, that's a good one. Or I would say, even, without even being that logical, just that something got a lot worse. So then they're busy. They're too busy either trying to do medical aid, or like they're both in pain, or something's going on that it's taking up their resources, where they're not, what I mean,
Yeah,
like you're trying to put out the fire,
exactly.
metaphorically speaking. Yeah.
Without angering some of the people who are listening to this podcast, hopefully I still made it in time.
Don't
What?
worry. I'm sure we've got people screaming at the
Well,
screen already, right?
I wanna correct that, dude. What are your opinions on potentially the phones already not being in their possession? Because this is a big theory here, that maybe at this point the phones are no longer in their possessions. Now, for me, I just wanna get a possible logical explanation of someone having acquired their phones through devious means and making like an attempt to call the authorities. Now, I will say it makes sense in a way that if the phones no longer belong to the girls at this point, but I don't know if they're alive or they're dead at that point. Maybe they have been like killed already by perps. But would it make sense for a perpetrator or perpetrators to just make a few red herrings, a few phone calls? What are your opinions in terms of that?
I mean, my opinion is no. My opinion is you don't that they don't plan that far ahead. That they're playing it like I don't see any reason. I've never heard of that ever happening, of someone doing some kind of like kidnapping crime like this, or assault, or some other kind of abduction, or planned crime like that. Like everyone's thinking. I've never heard of them calling the cops on themselves,
Yeah.
or trying, or like pretending to call the
I
cops
mean,
on
that's
themselves.
dude, that's perfectly rational to think that way. I definitely agree that if that was the case, it's super unusual, highly unusual. And let's remember that if the girls are making these calls 2 hours after their last picture was taken, sure, they could have still been killed by someone later on. It doesn't have to happen on the day one. I think for me personally, maybe even a more logical way of thinking about the perpetrator theory is thinking that maybe someone killed them, if that had happened, obviously, later on into their struggles when they're immobile and weak and tired and very hungry. I think that's when a perpetrator would pounce on them, per se. Now, let's move to the following day because I still want to go through these days, and then let's quickly jump to the theories. Oh yeah, so we're just at like the half an hour point. I think we're still on track. So let's keep going. April 2nd, the following day, Feliciano, the same tour guide, he was supposed to take the girls on a tour at 8 a.m. in the morning, but the girls don't show up. But what happened previously to 8 a.m. on April 2nd? Well, actually, just Lisanne's, just Lisanne's phone in the early morning hours of 6:58 a.m., so almost 7 a.m., attempted to call 112. So let's imagine if Guide Feliciano had something to do with the girls. Well, we don't know what Feliciano was actually doing at 8 a.m., but we know that he was in the girls' room at 9 a.m., and we know that the phone, at least Lisanne's phone, was active at 7 a.m. So, do you see where I'm getting at it with here? That maybe if, for say, Feliciano, had something to do with the girls' disappearance, and he was making the fake phone calls on himself. Oh, okay, maybe it makes sense, but the phones, they didn't get any connection, so he would have had to be calling from somewhere where he didn't have any connection, and then later on somehow package the phone in the backpack and just leave it in the rice field, where then the Gobi woman would later on find it. I mean, it feels like to me it's a really big stretch that Feliciano had somehow acquired the phones at that particular point in time, because just time-wise it doesn't make sense. But let's just go through the timeline. So Feliciano obtains the keys to the room at 9 a.m., barges in, doesn't see the girls. Now 11 a.m., a little bit before 11 a.m., Lisanne tries to call again. Apparently Lisanne, we don't know who's using the phone. Then at 2 p.m., Lisanne's phone is once again trying to call the emergency. And now this is the interesting part, because that third call from Lisanne's Samsung on April 2nd actually connects with like a reception or something like that for 1 to 2 seconds, but then it loses connection for 13 p.m., we have an earthquake happening in the region, which is something I've never heard about. Also, 6:14 p.m., Chris's phone tries to call 112 and a screenshot is taken. So, I don't know what to make of that. A screenshot is now taken, whatever. At in the evening, I guess the staff member of the Spanish school that the girls were supposed to attend, and as well as the guide Feliciano, go to the police station, and apparently both this staff member named Aileen and Feliciano, they visit the police station at 9:30 p.m. and apparently they are the ones who declare the girls missing. So once again, Feliciano is literally everywhere. But I guess in this sense, it makes sense. I don't want to cast any more suspicion on the man. I will say one thing that I've forgot to mention earlier on the show to correct myself. I remember the dog Blue, that apparently was the one who went with the girls on this track and things like that. Well, why? And if we go through the pictures, right, dude, let's take a look at the pictures. Why isn't he literally captured anywhere? Like, there's no sign of
Yeah.
Blue, and the girls were literally taking pictures all over the place. So to me, it's like, why didn't Blue appear in any of these pictures? So that's one of the things I wanted to correct. So before I go further on the timeline, you want to add anything to there? I know it's like a super random point in the
But
timeline to mention
but it
about the
came up
dog.
a lot though. Yeah,
Yeah,
everyone's like, "Well, the dog Blue is like acting like the dog had a freaking job as sentry." I mean, I get it because I have been places where dogs are part of the landscape, like the Grand Canyon's like that. At least when I went a long time ago in the '90s, dogs would literally be up and down the trail, and you're like, "What are they doing? Where are they?" Like a dog came out of nowhere. The dog, you're miles away from anywhere, and these dogs are going back and forth. And it turned out like, oh no, they think they're actually like that is actually their job to go back and forth between the town and like the trailhead, and like they actually help herd the burros and stuff like that. But yeah, no, you're right. The friggin' dog's not in any of the pictures, so
exactly, man.
he was missing in action.
Exactly. So that's one thing I wanted to mention. Okay, so let's move to April 3rd. Now, in the early morning hours, Chris's iPhone tries to call 911. Then I see that during the day, Cineproc started searching by air with helicopters to scour the area. So this is, on April 3rd, so 2 days into their disappearance. The guide Feliciano also starts searching on the trail and the path after the summit. So he starts searching for the girls. He doesn't find any trace of the girls, and he doesn't even find any footprints, which was apparently an odd situation for him and everyone else. Now, on 1:50 p.m., so a little bit after noon, Lisanne's Samsung was turned on, but no emergency call was made. So this is the situation where no calls are being made anymore, and I think the girls are maybe just turning on, if the girls are using the phone still, or whoever is using the phones. Maybe now the phones are only being used to see if reception is present and whatnot. So we have 4 p.m. The same thing happens with Chris's iPhone. 4 p.m. iPhone was turned on, no emergency call attempt. And then 19 minutes after that, 4:19 p.m. in the evening, or shortly before the evening began, Lisanne's Samsung was turned on once again. Let's move to April 4th right now. So the first thing that of interest to mention about April 4th, that this is the first day into the disappearance where Lisanne's Samsung is no longer being used. But let's jump to what Chris's iPhone is doing on April 4th. So 10:16 a.m. iPhone is turned on, no emergency call attempt. So once again, we could, I guess, speculate a little bit that maybe, Kris or whoever is using her phone maybe have checked for reception. Now, let's jump to what's actually happening during the day. So, on April 4th, Lisanne's brother, uncle, and the friend actually arrive in Boquete to help with the search, and helicopters fly over the jungle north of Boquete. Volunteers search on the ground in the area of the pipeline, Lost Waterfalls, and Questel Trail. And then, 1:42 p.m. on April 4th. This is the last thing of note that happened on April 4th. Once again, the iPhone was turned on, but no emergency call was attempted. Now, April 5th is probably, I would say, if not the most interesting day of the whole disappearance, it's probably in the, one of the more interesting ones. So, early in the evening, iPhone of Kris was turned on, no emergency call attempt was made. So, a pretty regular occurrence at that particular point in time. But let's see what happens earlier in the morning, like at 4:50 a.m. So this is still like the night. This is not even the morning. Lisanne's Samsung was turned on, but no emergency phone call was made. But an hour later at 5:56 a.m., the Samsung was turned on again. No emergency call was attempted, but the battery got exhausted and the phone never turned on ever again. So this is a time when, Lisanne's phone starts missing. Is dead. I'm sorry. But now let's jump to what happens during the day. So, other local guides start searching the area around Boquete. Volunteer teams continue searching throughout the weekend. 2 helicopters fly over the area once again. 40 volunteers also help search on the ground. However, poor weather conditions hamper the search. Native indigenous villagers who live around the Pianista area and beyond are shown photos of the missing girls to aid in the process. But this is not the most interesting part of April 5th. The most interesting part of April 5th, and let's remember, Lisanne's Samsung dies, but then Kris's iPhone was being entered with an incorrect PIN from now on and was never unlocked ever again. Obviously, you could still call emergency services without opening the phone because, back with, I think it was an iPhone 4 or something like that, there was like a little button to call emergency even without having to unlock the actual phone. But now this is where I want a little bit of your input, dude. So this is happening at 1:37 p.m. the first time that then, when Kris's iPhone is being used, but it can't be unlocked. So isn't like, I don't know, doesn't this seem like quite the doesn't it seem like quite a convenient time for Lisanne's Samsung to die, and then apparently maybe even Kris Kremers dying as well, because we would sort of think that maybe Kris Kremers dies, like physically is no longer alive, and then Lisanne takes over her iPhone, but then can't get the correct PIN to open. This is quite the circumstances, don't you think? Like everything just falls into place quite well.
Yeah, I mean, but maybe that's why it is happening the way it's happening. Like it's kind of a chicken and egg thing, right? Because maybe if that isn't happening, then somebody isn't trying the phone and getting things wrong. If that makes sense, but
Yeah,
maybe it's
yeah,
also where you're getting more desperate, where you're like, oh my god, like
yeah.
this is not getting better. Yeah.
Exactly. No, it makes sense, dude. It definitely makes sense. Now, let's go to April 6th, the following day. Cineproc officially starts searching the area on the ground. We have, on 2 occasions, Kris Kremers' iPhone being turned on, but it fails to be turned on because there's no pin entered correctly. So this happens at 10:26 p.m. I think they were supposed to say AM here, so the timeline got choppy here. And 1:37 p.m. So around midday two times. Now let's jump to oh no yeah exactly. Now let's jump to what happened from April 7th to April 10th, because a lot of interesting things will start happening here. Now from April 7th to April 10th, no one uses the phone anymore, which is crazy. The phone has been used every day, one of the phones at least. But now for a 3-day period from the 7th to the 10th, the phones are no longer being used, but we have that on the 7th, Cineproc and Seafront spend nights in search areas. So, people are searching for the girls at night. Now, April 8th, and this is the time when we could start the slideshow again. April 8th is where things really start to take a creepy theme. We are looking at the pictures that were taken on the camera on April 8th. So I don't know what to make of these pictures. I think we'll have to return to them shortly. April 9th, Cineproc start using sniffer dogs. April 11th, iPhone was used for the last time with an incorrect pin, but then around the midday afternoon of April 11th, the iPhone dies. The Cineproc and Seafront are still searching the area, and this is pretty much like the initial disappearance, where we probably believe that if we go along with the general theory that was produced by Panamanian government as well as the Netherlands government, this is the time when either most likely Lisanne is what the officials assume dies shortly as well, because the phone activity dies on April 11th, and just in general, without food or water, it's a stretch to still be alive, or like 10 days into the disappearance, let alone any longer. So I would say, the officials probably assume that this is where Lisanne most likely dies as well. But interesting things happen in the following weeks and months, and I'll just quickly breeze to them, and we'll finally get to talk about the theories. April 14th, so 3 days after that, search for the girls is finally scaled down. The Cineproc stops searching on April 14th. Local guide Plinio Montenegro flies over the area with Cineproc for the last time by helicopter. They didn't see anything. Now, on April 30th, so this is like, the ending of April, and let's remember that the girls disappeared on April 1st, a $30,000 reward was offered by the families. Now let's jump into apparently a month and a half in advance to June 14th. A backpack was handed in to authorities by a local indigenous Ngobi woman. The backpack was in pristine condition. It made no sense whatsoever, and the woman actually stated that she was in the same rice field the day before and she didn't see the backpack there, but on that day she saw the backpack, and she said that the backpack was definitely not there the day before. And we had stuff in the backpack, phones, passports, $82.40 if I'm not mistaken. Interesting stuff. Now, as I've said earlier, maybe the fact that it was turned in only right now was maybe in the hopes of cashing in the $30,000, because you would probably trade $82.40 for the possibility of potentially obtaining $30,000. Let's leave it for now, or maybe for this show, or for this episode in particular, let's move 5 days in advance. Lisanne's shoe and Kris' pelvic bones are found behind a tree near a river stream. A team of 6, including Feliciano, find these remains. This area had previously been searched by rescue teams and they didn't find anything, but Feliciano all of a sudden starts finding stuff. Chris's shoe found by Feliciano and his team. Kris jean shorts also found at a later date. So it's pretty curious how all of these things are now turning up within a couple of days of each other. Like the family offers 30 racks as reward money, and now all of a sudden people are, no one's finding anything for a month and a half, and all of a sudden on the same week, it's like we got the bones, we got the shoe, we got the backpack. There's a lot of things that are turning up all of a sudden, if you know what I mean. Now let's move to the end of the month, July 30th. More small bone fragments found by, guess who? Feliciano and his team. Once again, now let's jump to August 2nd. Another bone fragment from Kris' rib bone is found. I don't know who found this one because it's very important. If Feliciano found every single bone that has been found, I mean, come on, man. But I don't think it says who found these bones, so I don't know. And then let's move to the 29th of August. The last timestamp is that local villagers find more of the girl's remains along the river, the bones of a lower leg, a small bone, and a piece of skin from Lisanne that, authorities later said the skin was tampered with. Let's leave it at that, dude. Finally, we're done with the timeline, dude. Your reactions.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like this, going over this and based on the comments and the feedback and even, like I said, other YouTubers, it's pretty fascinating when you look. It's almost more fascinating to watch how other people read the events and what they read into it. Because, I mean, what's your feeling? From my side, I feel like the consensus is about a third of the people think that, they met some kind of death by misadventure, so like no like homicide or criminal conspiracy, but like they did something unwise and unfortunately suffered because of it. And then the other 2/3 of the comments tend to be the opposite, that there was some kind of like criminal conspiracy or at least one offender. I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so basically, I think in regards to 1/3 of it being an accident, yeah, you're correct probably, but I will say that maybe there's another, like, let's say 10 to 15% of the people who are undecided, at least in our comment sections, who are like sort of just saying that maybe the girls were underprepared, or maybe that, they feel bad that what happened to them. But in terms of the people with actual opinions, I'd say there's definitely more people, like by far, more people leaning towards something, bad happening to the girls. And I think this is a good time for us to go through the comments finally, and then, maybe react to them, because a lot of the theories will be part of the comments. So it's going to be good for us to dissect them. But one last thing before we jump, I just want to quickly jump to that website for it was TripAdvisor, of course. So let me just quickly find the exact comment regarding Feliciano. So the first thing I want to mention about Feliciano is that he has amazing reviews. Like, he has, I believe, 43 reviews in total, and 42 of them are excellent, and then one review is poor, and then obviously the one that's poor is the most interesting to us. So so I want to quickly read the sole poor review of Feliciano. So, and it's been liked a lot actually, so it's pretty crazy. It was written on July 24th, 2019. And it says, "It took me almost a year to finally post this review. I strongly recommend women to not hire Feliciano as your guide if you're by yourself. It's a big contrast if you look at the other reviews where Feliciano is described as a very nice person, which he probably is for many people. I have to say, he's very charming, funny, and you can probably as you will read in the other reviews, have a great day with him. did a walking tour with him. He's the guide that knows the area by heart. Not long after we left, the subtly started. Oh yeah, not my apologies. Not long after we left, he subtly started to flirt with me and also touching me. First my hand, but also my arms, shoulder, and legs even after telling him many times to stop doing that. He wears a big machete and suggested to chop off my legs. This is, of course, was a joke, but still. He has an obsession for Northern European women, and I felt very unsafe. It's a personal story, but Google his name and you'll find, unfortunately, more stories like this about him. And we all know what this woman is referring to. So, uh, dude, your opinions on the soul poor review.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting that I guess just because it's the only review like that doesn't mean that it's not the only time. No, sorry, that doesn't mean it's the only time that ever happened. I mean, it is possible as a creepo. I don't
Yes.
know.
So
I
so
don't know
but
that. I mean,
yeah,
yeah,
what I was gonna say is this is how he looks. So he's like an older individual. I sort of imagined him
it's
being
ancient.
younger.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, me too. Until I saw, so he actually came up today in some of my research, where it was like, oh, this is the same exact guide, and yeah, and then I looked, I was like, oh my god, he's an old man. Like for some reason, I don't know if it was the same for you. In my head, I pictured some guy like in his 20s, you know,
Yeah, yeah, exactly,
yeah, and then this
exactly.
guy's like about 40 years older than that. Um, I mean, it doesn't mean he's not a creepo, but it is interesting. I guess the one thing I would ask is that person, can you tell if that person who left the bad review, did they have any other reviews? I mean, is it possible that this is like somebody that's kind of running with the, like we've seen this before. People don't always post things in good faith, or sometimes they try to jump on the narrative.
Only
Is there any
one,
chance this is, yeah.
only one
Uh,
review, and this person, I believe, is a level one, like
uh,
advisor. So it's only one review, but yeah.
yeah, it's a little suspect where, I mean, and how long ago is the review?
So it's on July of 2019. So
Yeah,
a
yeah,
good
so
couple of
well after.
years. Yeah,
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 I don't know. I mean, it is. I mean, it's interesting. It's just I can't put a lot of weight into it because, like, from my mind, there's lots of people that love to write fictions. Once they know that they're sort of interested readers. So, like, because of what happened, we're all
yeah.
going to read that review, and there's people that get off on that.
Exactly, man. I think this is a great point for us to go through the comments, and I think we'll try to go through as many as we possibly can. So, I would like to begin with the ones left on episode number 56, and I've got like these that were the most interesting to me. So I'll just quickly read through them, and hopefully as many as we can, and let's just react to them. I think this was the whole point of doing the show today, and I think this will definitely come back to this case. But for the fourth time that we're coming back, I think we should definitely talk about what our audience members think of this case. So the first comes from a Russian user with like a Russian nickname. So I'm not gonna pronounce it, even though I probably could, but probably very incorrectly. So I think they went through tourist trails and got to more wilder trail for locals. And after 2 hours, something happened to one of the girls, looks like to Kris. So Kris couldn't move but alive. So Lisanne couldn't leave her to try to find the network or get back. They thought they will be found by rescue team and just have to survive until then, but at 8 April, Kris died for some reason. Lisanne couldn't use her phone to use GPS, didn't know PIN on Kris' phone, and after a week without food, she didn't have energy, physical and mental, to go back to the trail, so she died too. The question is why rescue group is so messed up that they look in a lot of places, but not in a routes that connected to tourist trail El Pianista. Taxi driver left them there. They must be some other people that saw them. They were 2 hours away from Pianisto Trail for 10 days. WTF. Basically, other comments will have better grammar, I promise, but also, I mean, this is a Russian native, so you can't really expect all like him to have perfect English. So I think initially what this person is saying that maybe I think this is like the injury uh, theory, right?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, this person's saying a lot of stuff, but yeah, it is the injury theory, and sort of like you said, some criticism of the efforts. I mean, to that person's question though, there were actually a couple different people who did see them on their way up the trail,
Yeah.
if that's what they're saying. Yeah, no, there was like, this came up in one of the videos today I was looking at, was that they did confirm that, like, somebody was like, they were on the trail. So another guide was showing this one reporter from this one Dutch reporter, and they're like, yeah, like just see that house over there, like that person saw them,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
they was pointing from the trail. So yeah.
Exactly. Let's move on. Now, there's Mark Allen commenting to a response from some other person, but only his like reply I found interesting. He says, "I agree with you. A lot of people are not making much sense saying bleach, 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 referring to the bleached pelvis bones of Kris Kremers. Maybe it was some sort of a ritual, and he doesn't think that's the case. He thinks that is BS. That girl's pelvis was boiled in a pot. There's some serious high caliber evil that happened to the two girls. They were taken advantage of when they got to the point where they were hungry, hurt, and weak. That's when they had a dozen bad things happen to them and bones scattered a mile apart and heads are missing. Come on. A blind, deaf person could see these girls were accosted by some bad, dark people. They were abused, tortured, cannibalized. Rolled up skin found? Question marks. This isn't an accidental situation. These girls were stalked and held captive, and I'm not going to be graphic. Well, you sort of have been, dude. Just use the worst imaginary nightmare possible. And what is the bottom right corner of the blonde girl's picture? There's something in the bottom right hand corner of the picture of the blonde. I'm not really sure which one this man is referring to, but we have later on comments that I want to actually link up to the pictures that we can see from Juan's compilation. So let's just move past this just for time's sake. I think we all know what we feel about this guy. Maybe he's like a little bit too invested emotionally into this, but I respect the emotions for sure. Now let's jump to another one comment from Chris with Ultras. Speculation. If some poor opportunist killer did kill them and took those American dollars, someone would suspect him like, dude, where did you get this amount of money? $80 is like over 1 year's salary for most people in Panama. And then if police heard some random poor guy having large amount of dollars, they would interrogate and link him. There's also some tribes or rogues in the area or in the jungle, but they would have taken everything. So it's a weird case. So your opinions, dude? Do you think that it's weird that the locals did not take the $82? Maybe they were expecting 30 grand.
I mean, yeah, I remember when we've talked about in previous episodes. I'm kind of on the fence because I almost think it's more likely, like, as much as it, like, maybe a city slicker like you and me would try to play the long game. I could see them being the opposite, where they're just like, I don't want any of that trouble. I don't want any. I don't even know that they wanted to become involved. Like,
Yeah.
I do think that maybe somebody found it and they sat on it for a little while, and that's why, like, everything was so pristine. By the way, let me ask one weird thing, because people always mention how clean the backpack was. The phones are in the backpack, right? That's how we got them
Yeah,
in the
exactly.
back. And they're like, everything. This was supposedly like, the whole idea is like, all the water did all this damage. How do these things stay in such good shape? I kind of wondered, do you think it's possible that the phones I wonder. This is just off the wall. I never even thought of this before until we went through it today. Could the phone, could the picture mode of the phone have been set off by like contact with water?
Um,
Because they're not weatherproof phones, right? Like I don't even. I remember at one point they were trying to sell like. I think there are some.
but yeah,
You
like
know what I mean?
I know what you mean, but like, yeah, of course, I think a possibility is there, but what would that mean? I don't really understand what would that
Yeah. So,
potentially mean.
so like I don't. I just keep on wondering: is there any point where the phones maybe aren't actually being operated by a living person? So there's
Oh,
always, we always look at this whole chain of photos afterwards, and it's,
but
I
the
think that
photos
that's
came
probably,
from the camera,
yeah,
so
yeah. Okay, I see. So I
yeah.
mean, well, maybe same thing for the camera. Is the camera the kind of camera where the lens goes back and like? By the way, so I have,
What about the Chris Hare's pictures? Just that
yeah.
fact, that
No,
there's
that's, yeah. I mean, no, it's true. So I mean, there's stuff that kind of just. I always just wonder though,
yeah.
how do we know that anybody was actually like at the wheel for all
That's
of
a
these
good
things?
dude. That's a good point. And actually, going through the comments there, if we still have time, dude, we definitely are returning back to this case because there's no time, dude. We're running out of time. But this, I'm having a great time trying to figure out what happened. So, if the audience members think that this is good content and you want us to go back here, because dude, there's so much comments. We're not gonna be able to do them this week, but I definitely want to go back here. So let's go through some more comments, dude. This what you've just said will actually play into one of the comments if we don't have enough time this week. Maybe we return next week. We'll see. Let's see what the feedback is from the audience. Let's jump to other comments now. This was a heavily liked comment. This case cries out for justice and to eradicate the huge amount of corruption within the Panamanian authorities, plus the most ugly and darkness crimes in that culture. And this has 30 likes, so that's why I want to respect this comment and ask for your opinion. What does Bobby Gonzalez mean by this comment, stating that dark ugly and darkness that occurs in the Panamanian culture? Is he referring to maybe remember the tribe that that uncovered, like the investigators that uncovered that the tribe was killing its own members in Panama, and then there was a massive like grave? Do you think maybe Bobby is referring to that?
Yeah, maybe like that's a good one. Like it's almost like our version here in America would be when people pick on like, you know, kind of the corners where there's sometimes things are not supervised well. Like I know, like Appalachia. Have you ever seen the movie Deliverance? Maybe that's like
Yeah.
kind of like the the Panamanian version of Deliverance, where you're away from central authority and maybe
Yeah,
people get up to no good.
exactly. I mean, just for the sake that it has so many likes, we have to respect it. Another highly liked comment from Rogue Life. He says, or she says, this is just so bizarre. Even if they fell and died, the whole case is mind blowing. The pictures just blatantly scare me, to be honest. Finding the bones and backpack, I mean, WTF. I mean, I agree. Another highly liked comment from DK the Cake, 19 likes on this one. Isn't it strange they made just 2 calls in the first day? I mean, I would freak out with the idea of spending the night in nature and would make calls 10 times at least. So, dude, without stopping for too long, once again, we have and a lot of likes. So, a lot of people think it's weird that they only called twice.
Yeah, I agree with that because one of the other YouTubers I was watching, and he was kind of proceeding along these assumptions that, let's say, they would be very logical, and it's hard to like if they did in fact like turn off the phones to preserve power, because by the way, my phones from that era could barely last longer than a day, and then when you're out of range, the phone will actually try harder. to get in contact. So sometimes it'll actually, we one of my phones, my legacy phones from almost around that area, that era does that now, where it'll actually sometimes burn through the battery power more when you're like out of range or kind of in the edge of range because
Yeah,
it's trying harder to
makes
get
sense.
connection. So yeah, I mean, part of me is like, does it seem plausible that they would even have the presence of mind if, like, let's suppose one of them fell and like broke her leg or ankle and they're running out of water. And by the way, the other thing that's crazy is someone else pointed out, the same person actually, it gets cold at night at those altitudes. So it's kind of amazing that they even made it so long, if indeed they lived, at least one of them lived
Yes.
as long as,
How do you
yeah,
explain
as long as,
that? How do you explain that?
that's odd. I mean, they did lose some altitude again. So the Dutch television video that I saw pointed out that, like, it looks like, when they kept on going, when they got to the top and then they kept on going, it looks like they may have lost some altitude again. So maybe that was
Oh,
enough between that and, if you huddle up with somebody,
yeah.
your your body warmth can help. But I mean, I think probably the most commented thing is, it seems really weird that they did this trip, right? Because they
Mm,
didn't. I don't like you gave at the beginning of this show. You said, like, for them to do this trip based on like these advisories they had from like locals. There were like three basic things you had to have, and they had none of them. Like, they
yeah,
didn't have the clothing, they didn't have the guide, they didn't have water, and
exactly.
they seem to have done this like on a whim, against their better judgment. Because as I understand it, Lisanne was actually some kind of like hiking and mountaineering enthusiast, was what one source was saying. So if that's
One,
true, then
yeah,
that's,
but
yeah.
also in respect to Lisanne, and this was heavily speculated. And Juan, I've seen his own video where he talks about what he thinks of the case. He finds it very speculative, but there is a lot of people on the internet. There are a lot of people who state that Lisanne was the one with asthma, if you remember that point of the story. But then once again, Kris Kremers' phone is being entered with incorrect pin codes. So it's like, okay, Lisanne had the asthma, so maybe she died first or had an accident, but then we also may think that she's using Chris's phone in attempts to unlock it. But why she tries to unlock it for so many times if she knows that she can't unlock it? Um, you know, Whatever. I think we could move past that. But yeah, dude, I mean, this is some excellent comments. And we have another one. Um, uh, we responded on the channel to that comment, to Decaying Cake. Uh, exactly, that's what's suspicious to me as well. Why the long pause? Why not make more phone calls on day one? And then Decayed Cake says, and why they didn't take any photos of themselves in the daytime after first emergency call for 11 days, especially the first few days, telling them what happened. Both of them were keeping handwritten journals and they took photos of their everyday activities, places, etc. Their camera didn't have battery issues. They could record a video on it. This is another excellent point from Decayed Cake. What do you make of that? Why not a single picture of themselves when they have been taking multiple pictures on the same day? Not a single picture anymore, man. Not one for 11
Yeah,
days.
that was a common. It, it's not a bad question. It's a very good question. The only thing I can think of is, and I'll take this from two different sources. So one is the movie The Edge, where there's.
Okay.
By the way, awesome movie. Alec Baldwin, Anthony Hopkins. They get kind of like stranded in the Alaskan wilderness and have to survive. It's a crazy good movie, um, with an awesome bear attack scene. And this is like not computer effects. This is like real stuff. But one of the things that it's based on a book written by Michael Crichton. And anyways, the Anthony Hopkins character insinuates that one of the reasons why people die is in the woods is shame. Like, they actually feel a lot of embarrassment of their situation. And I'll say that, as much as that's fiction, when I did the Jared Negrete, sorry, Jared Jared Negrete case, and then compared it to what happened to someone else in the exact same mountain almost exactly 10 years later, it is interesting because in both cases, it almost looks like people that are lost like that, they do get embarrassed that like they're lost.
Yeah.
And I mean, maybe they don't want to admit to themselves that it like this is it.
Yeah,
So they're
but
not really thinking,
I
but it
just
is strange. Yeah, why wouldn't you?
it's
Right?
strange. I just, you know why I cut you off so quickly
Yeah.
in regards to this answer, because we did have like some comments like going at you again,
Uh-oh.
saying that they did make phone calls to 911, so they're sort of thinking that how are they ashamed to take pictures of themselves, but they're calling 911. But I do get it,
Yeah.
dude. I do get it. I do get a
No, no,
point.
it's a good
Yeah.
counter. No, you're right. I mean, I don't have a good answer for that. I mean, it's true, right? Why wouldn't they do it?
Yeah.
It's also, I mean, it's also odd because like I was just thinking like in some ways this is such a weird case because it's one of the few times where we have like in a way we do have a video diary of what's going on and just they're not saying anything
Yeah.
after like after everything goes wrong. They stop communicating, like everything's like, oh look, we're on a trip, here we are taking pictures, isn't this great? And then it all goes downhill, and it's like, could it have been that debilitating?
Yeah.
Could they have been that wrecked by what was going on that they're like they
Exactly,
couldn't
man.
even say, hey, we're dying here? Yeah, it's
Crazy.
yeah, fair enough.
Yeah. You know what I've been thinking? Maybe let's go through episodes 56 comments, and then literally, if the interest is there, maybe we could return for more comments and more things next week, because I was too optimistic to think that I was thinking that we won't have anything to talk about actually today, and I'm like rushing here. So I would really like to return to finish off this episode on 92. So we'll see if the audience members enjoy this, and also leave your comments on this episode, because on the next episode we would be talking about your comments that you leave here. So that's also a cool thing that could happen. So let's move through the comments. This is a conversation from Ken Lee. It begins, exactly. If you look at phone signal checks on Chris's phone on April 4th to April 6th, it's obvious these were scheduled checks, as if someone was doing it during their late morning tea break and after lunch. There's a point there. And then Decayed Cake is once again responding, yes, I think they were captured the first day, not long after they made the first calls, and whoever got them got their passcodes and made those calls to play with police and to make it look like they were lost in nature for 11 days. Also, I think they encountered that guide guy, probably referring to Feliciano again, and he invited them to his coffee farm. Let's remember that Feliciano had like a farm in the middle of the jungle. Well, it was not much of a jungle. Juan made great length in his videos explaining that it was not a typical jungle, it was like a forest. It was not a jungle. Apparently it was not as dangerous as a jungle, it was more of a forest, but still, you know what I mean. Also, continuing on with the comment referring to Feliciano's coffee farm, it is said that he usually brings tourists to his farm, and exactly that's what we've seen in one of the pictures already from the reviews. And girls were suspicious at first. That's why they made those only one call to possibly let the police know where they are in case something happens, but later they didn't get any more chance to make calls. This is a great point. I will return to it shortly. The guide who loves to give the thumbs up, and a whole list of people related. Who knows who was involved, but I tend to agree with you on the woman being captured on April 1st. The old guide also literally barged into the room in which the women were staying the next day after they supposedly didn't turn up for a tour with him. Why was he, a total stranger, so concerned? We talked about that last part, but one thing's very interesting here. Decay the Cake now says that maybe there's a high chance that the girls were, wait, they weren't with Feliciano on April 1st. So maybe Feliciano sort of, okay, so Decayed Cake is insinuating that Feliciano somehow still finds them on April 1st, even though they weren't supposed to do anything on April 1st together, and then offers them a trip to his coffee house slash farm. And that's when things get creepy. And the girls tried calling the police once, but then Feliciano, you know, does something bad. So your opinions, man. I mean, it's a in my opinion pretty far fetched, but
Yeah, I mean, everybody saw them on the trail. They see them alone. I mean, I'll put that in the same bucket as, I've heard people say, well, the photos. Oh, actually, I think you have this lined up, and maybe I'll have to wait till our next episode, but or our follow up. People saying that the photos were photoshopped.
oh, dude,
So I put
that's
that in sort of the same bucket.
that
Yeah, I know,
we
maybe that's
got
like a whole
comments.
other.
We got comments, dude. We definitely got comments like that, but I think they would come up on the next episode. So please, guys, if you want to hear that, because we're right now at 1 hour and 20 minutes, we'll probably be wrapping up. I'm not even sure if we're gonna manage to go through the comments on 56. We're like 30% done, so I think we should move forward. Another comment from Kaylin B's Caldwell. If you go back to the picture of her hair towards the middle lower part, look through the few clearer strands and you can see her nostrils. If you look at pictures of her before, it's the same shape. Her hair was over her face, definitely creepy. Now, I'm super glad that this comment came up, because if this is the last thing that we're actually gonna look on the assets, then so be it, because this is the one that I found very interesting. So this man, Callum B's Caldwell, is referring to the picture. Let me just quickly jump to the picture, to the particular picture that he's referring to. So wait, let me just start the slideshow. Okay, so these are this picture right here. Obviously, dude, I know you know what I'm talking about. Like, this is the picture of Chris's hair. And now, what the commenter said, that he, through like clearer strands, we apparently could see Chris's nostrils, which would indicate that the hair is over her face. Now, what I think the commenter meant is maybe this area. If you can see, dude, can you see where I'm pointing?
Oh yeah, I
Because
mean,
I just want to finish up and I'll ask for your input. So basically, these are the clearer strands, and maybe this is one nostril, and maybe somewhere here would be another nostril. So maybe that's what he meant, that the hair is sort of over. Chris is not lying on her face. Maybe Chris is looking straight into the camera. Maybe she's dead already, and whoever's taking the picture is picturing Chris like straight up, but her hair is over her head. Now, I don't think that's the case. Personally, I just don't see it. But we won't get to those comments today. Maybe in the follow-up episode. But there are other people noticing. And dude, I need you to look right now at this picture. Do you see this dark, more brownish hair on the right bottom corner? People believe that this is Lisanne's hair. And now, if this is truly, in fact, Lisanne's hair, because this doesn't look like Chris's hair. Maybe it's just the angle. Maybe it's still Chris's hair. But if this is not, and it's Lisanne's, then there are two possible scenarios. Lisanne's the one who's taking the picture. Okay, three possible scenarios. Kris Kremers is taking a picture of her head, probably of the back of her head, trying to see if, she has some sort of an injury while she's sort of laying next to Lisanne, and Lisanne's hair just sort of got in the shot. The second scenario, Lisanne is taking the picture of Chris's hair, or this is the more sensational third scenario that we will probably won't get to this week, is people thinking that a third party is taking a picture. So neither Lisanne nor Kris is taking this picture, if you know what I mean. And the third party is already taking the picture, and just by accident or, by, just somehow, both girls' hair got into the shot. So your opinions on what I've just said?
I don't know what to make of this photo. It's such a weird photo. I mean, some people question the credibility of the photo itself. They're like, well, how is that hair so clean after, X number of days in the jungle?
Exactly, which is
So,
crazy.
like,
This is 8 days, by the
yeah.
way, 8 days into the thing.
I mean, she must have had the best hair ever. But yeah, I mean, I'll say for the hair in her face thing. Um, have you ever gotten like someone's? I don't know if it's just me. I kind of don't like having long hair in my face.
Yeah.
Um, I guess in this case, someone else's long hair in my face since my hair isn't that long. But it, like, it tickles my nose. It's just it sets off like a weird reflex. So I feel like if that was true, then maybe she's done. But it doesn't make sense. Like the hair's too high for that.
Also, it looks like a neck. In my personal opinion,
Yeah.
this doesn't necessarily look like a face and nostrils. For me personally, this looks like a neckline. You know what I mean?
I mean, it's like I said, it's so fascinating with these cases because people, it's just like the ink blot thing. People really project into it. I never even thought about that them being side by side and someone taking a photo of somehow catching both of their hair
Yeah.
into it. It does look kind of matted on that side, though. Like, I
Yeah.
will say it is discolored, and I never really noticed that before. Like that exact area where you're pointing where it's dark, well, just up from that, there's like some kind of like twisted looking strand. Yeah, just right in that area, right? That kind of line right there. That almost does seem like, yeah, like that whole area. It does look like it's getting all twisty and stuff. So
What could that mean?
anything though, right? It could be dirt. It could be like, you know, like you said, the jungle and the weather and mud and everything else. But I think here's the other thing is, even then, I think camera photo. Well, I don't know. I actually was this from the camera or from the phone?
There are no pictures from the phones.
Okay,
It's all camera taken.
it's all camera. Yeah, I don't know because if it was a phone camera, I would be like, well, like I know my phone sometimes makes stuff look way better than it is because of the algorithms, that like get updated now on the
Yeah.
the phone cameras. But like those, I don't know. I mean, some of those cameras have like easy modes
Yeah.
that crank up the saturation and stuff. Yeah, it's just, I mean,
It's weird.
yeah.
To put it lightly. Yeah, let's go through a few more comments. As I've said, like this is, we still want to be somewhat time sensitive. So let's see what else we can find here. So yeah, let me just quickly set it up. Pedro Martins says, I believe they were kidnapped and kept somewhere in a cave or similar. They were the ones calling 911 probably when the captors were not around, and they had a limited time to use the phones. Maybe one of them was not properly tied. That is the most logic explanation why so few calls were made, in my opinion. I mean, it's a good opinion. It's self-explanatory. Let's jump to another one. We have a quite liked comment from Foxy White Tip. It's a pretty cool name. So they get an email confirming the volunteering on Friday, but Monday they are turned away. And then someone's asking who arranged this. Now, I mean, what's your take, dude? I really found the whole them not being accepted to volunteer at the school thing pretty strange. Like wouldn't you always want to have additional volunteers? And also, if they were accepted, they would still be alive at this point, most likely.
Yeah, that is actually. Let me ask you again for clarification, so I can piss off someone else who will yell at me in the comments. Was it volunteer, or were they actually expecting to get paid? Even though I don't know that
I don't have the correct information, but I would definitely, if I had to guess, I would say it's definitely for free.
okay. Because I mean, let me just once again play devil's advocate a little bit. Pretend you're like a local Costa Rican who's gone to school and become like a language expert, and then here are these like European tourists coming in to do your job for free.
I see
You
your
know what I'm
point.
saying?
I see your point. Yeah.
Yeah. So wonder if it is possible that whoever was in charge of wherever they were going to go was like, oh yeah, you know what, like Panama first. Yeah,
Mm,
this is like, it's nice that these two young ladies want to come, you know, like play savior here and teach us, but like we actually have some Panamanians that want to get paid for their work, and like you're kind of like
yeah.
you're not helping the local economy by doing this as much as you have good intentions.
Okay. I mean, you always find, I guess, ways to anger the listeners because, dude, I mean,
Yeah,
it makes
yeah.
sense, but I can already see
That one
the
alone.
I can
Yeah, I
already
can't wait.
see. Well, please, guys, just go easy on Glenn. Come on, like these are like excellent points at the end of the day. You know what I mean? Like I wouldn't have thought about that. Let's go to Jet Patty, who will make appearances and other comments from other videos. From what I understand, there was also one passport in the backpack. A passport from Western Europe or United States is worth thousands on the black market. And we replied that, yep, that's a pretty valuable object, pretty self explanatory. Our good man, Jace1 Kilo J, who's an avid commenter, really cool guy, says they said it likely isn't abduction because they'd be caught on the trail. Apparently, the trail was barren and devoid of killers long enough for those girls to be lost for days without being found. Yeah, it doesn't sit right with me. And then, a response from Jerry. When the parents of one of the girls went on the same trail, they even met locals with their animals. It's a popular trail and it's not so easy to get lost. So I think both of these commenters actually think that uh, it's pretty interesting how they got lost because apparently a lot of people are, walking through the trails. I think that's a good point, don't you think?
Yeah, I mean, even in fact, and by the way, hi to Jason Killer J, who's one of our best fans. Um, yeah, and he always has great comments. Yeah, it is interesting. I'll say the one thing that kind of didn't strike me right with the guide again, going back to the guide about that topic was about the trail. He was like, well, the trail is really, it's almost impossible to get lost because like it's impossible to get off the trail without doing so intentionally.
Exactly.
And
Yeah.
he was like really insistent of it. But then when you look at the trail, like the same footage where the guy was like, the other guide was like, oh, look over there. There's a house of somebody who actually saw them on the trail. But then, but then that same guide was like, oh yeah, but it was like super slippery, super rocky, and it was into like really deep bush and trees and like really thick jungle, and then like literally right to the side of them you could fall into a chasm.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? There wasn't any like guardrail. This is a mountain with like a mountain where your path up is like on these rain slicked stones that literally still have water running down them.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yeah, I don't know. I mean, you know what I mean? Maybe if you're like a mountain goat, like that old guide, yeah, I mean, you can walk up anything. You're not going to get lost. But I could see, I mean, by the way, one of those, the point where supposedly they were supposed to turn around, it kind of looked the same forward and back. So this is the point where her parents got to the top of that trail, the summit, and they're like, okay, well, this is where they were supposed to turn around and go back down again, and that should have been easy. And here's where they kept going. And I looked at it and I was like, I don't know, like if it's dark and you're kind of dehydrated and disoriented, and maybe like didn't they walk around a little bit and take some pictures? So it's like, yeah, maybe they did get kind of confused or
Yeah.
whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, pretty much. By the way, I really just, on the side went through all the other comments, and dude, there's just so many. I think we need like a dedicated episode to go through them, to be honest. And then we also had like another theory that we wanted to talk about. Remember those two guys with the like in the water and things like that? Because I already see that this is gonna go out of hand, and this, this is a crazy case. Um, how about we cut it here? And it's not like I'm not enjoying this episode. Like, this is literally the most fun episode like I've done, like, I believe, ever on the show. But I will say, how about we see if the audience members wants more of this, because I don't want to make this like into 3 hours this week. You know what I mean? We could definitely make it into 3 hours if the audience wants to make it into 3 hours, but like I don't want to force down this like intensive content because there's so much to talk about. So, uh, dude, what do you say? Do we check out if the audience and the fans and the listeners want to see the second part of the discussion?
Yeah, man, I'm with you. Let's see what the feedback is so far and what we talked about, and let's let the users, the viewers, the fans actually pick. Is this more content they want? And we're not saying we have to do it back to back like this. This could be something we save for the next month. But I'm really curious to see how well this will be received.
Yeah, same here. I mean, this definitely uh, like I was super optimistic we could get it done, but I don't want this to be like a 4 hour episode. So, and there's so much to talk about actually. Yeah, I have like other theories I wanted to talk about. Yeah, so let's see what the fans think. I mean, this has been a super different episode. I hope everyone enjoyed it. So I guess we'll be signing out before this show gets out of hand this week. And definitely in the comments, please leave your opinions. And because if we do end up, doing the show once again next week, then we will be like, looking at your this week's comments. So it's like, you know what I mean? So, by the way, for everyone who's watching this on the podcast apps, our apologies if it sounds weird, because on the YouTube side we are sort of showing stuff as well on the visual assets while we talk. So hopefully you guys are also enjoying it. Really glad that those numbers are growing on the podcast apps and more people are joining every week. So that's fantastic. So yeah, guys, this has been super fun, but without keeping this too long, maybe because it doesn't have to be that long, maybe you guys don't like this or something like that, we're signing out. We'll catch you next week, but what we will be doing will depend on your guys' reactions. So definitely stay tuned, and as always, have a good rest of the week and the weekend, whatever you're doing. I hope everyone's healthy and safe, and we'll catch you next time. Peace out.